Jim Klauck here on the Beach Money Podcast. I hope you're sitting on the beach or you're in the mountains or wherever you want to be making your beach money. Another friend of Jordan Adler's is Nate Dominguez. Nate, how are you?
Awesome, Jim. How are you today? Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I'm living the dream. Thank you so much. Hey, I love what you do because you're in the networking business. I know something about what you do. You're in BNI, Business Network International. Tell us
Yes.
a little bit about yourself and about how you help other people connect with people.
I will gladly do so. Any friend of Jordan's is a friend of mine. So thank you so much for having me today, Jim. I am not on the beach. I'm coming to you from my home here in Scottsdale, Arizona, but I do love the beach, not quite as much as Jordan, but close. And I've been very lucky and blessed to spend a lot of time with Jordan at different beaches around the country and around the world. So I'm not at the beach today, but I do love the beach. So yes, I work with BNI, which stands for Business Network International. People ask me, what do you do? I say I'm a networker. They oftentimes will say something like, what is that? Or they'll ask me if I'm in IT. I don't network with technology very well. I like to stick with people. And networking is what gets me out of bed every day. I've been doing it full time for almost 20 years now. Went to college at Northern Arizona University and got a marketing degree. But what I found was they didn't really teach me much practical application about marketing and business. Instead, it was all theory. And so networking to me is a very practical way for small business owners, entrepreneurs, salespeople, big businesses, one-man shops, nonprofits, churches, PTAs, you name it, to grow and to scale. And I like to have a lot of fun in my life. And so networking to me is like building businesses and having fun along the way with other people, helping them grow their businesses, hopefully them helping me or others in return. What we say a lot in BNI around the world, we're an international organization in more than 75 different countries. And our common theme all around the world is givers gain. We find the more that members of BNI and citizens of society give to each other first, it happens in chronological order. We give to others first, and then we gain in return. You never know where it's going to come from or how it's going to look. But I've been a member of a chapter myself for 19 years now, and I've given a ton, but I can say as humbly as possible, I've probably gotten back tenfold what I've given to other people when it comes to growing businesses. So I love it. It is what I do.
Yeah, well, you've got to sow seeds. And for some reason, inside of us as humans, we want to take the shortcut. And so when many people go to events, what I'm about to say probably is they say, "Hi, Nate," because I'm looking at your name tag. "I'm Jim," and I hand you my business card.
Oh, yeah.
Nope, that's not what you do, right? You say, "Hi, Nate, I'm Jim. What do you do and how can I help you?" Right? That's kind of what we're supposed to do. How can I help you? And then maybe you say, "Well, what do you do, Jim?" "Well, thank you for asking, Nate." And you might ask me for my card. There's one of those rules, right? You should never give your card out unless someone asks for it. Do you believe in that?
100%, especially these days. And to your comment about kind of taking the easy route, I'm 42 years old, and for better and worse, I'm seeing that trend grow more than it shrinks. And I'm especially seeing it with the younger generation and younger business people. And my theories are that it has to do with social media and instant gratification. And but I really find relationships are the key to the city in anything we do. And in the greeting card space, in the relationship space that Jordan's in, and what I do in BNI, and you and me building a relationship through this podcast and all of your viewers. And so everything starts with relationships. And what I find, especially those people who will just throw their business cards out anywhere they can, they think they can grow a business by skipping the relationship step. And if you or any of your followers have ever figured out how to do that, I would love to know it, and I will learn it and chant it from the rooftops. But I've studied this game of networking quite a bit, and it seems to me that everything starts and ends with relationships. And those people like Jordan Adler, he's a master at it, who build relationships first, who lead with their hand open and out first, end up getting all they want from business and life and the community versus the opposite.
I agree. When you're a small business owner, or even more so self-employed, and there are a lot of self-employed people who join BNI chapters, which is really a smart thing to do, by the way. If you are not part of a networking organization, I would suggest that you join one, and BNI is the most infamous one, started by Dr. Ivan Meisner a very long time ago. I've interviewed him before as well, and I've been part of a BNI group. I was president of my BNI group. And as Nate knows, it might be the best position to have
Yes.
in the group. But of course, everyone's going to know you in that position as well. And so when you're like a very small business owner or self-employed, like I said, many people in these groups are realtors and insurance agents and so forth, and they're not large conglomerates. As a matter of fact, BNI is not for a huge company. It is for smaller organizations or individuals. And I say this all the time, and people are going to say, yeah, I know this. People buy from people they know, like, and trust. So if they don't know you and they don't like you, and certainly if they don't trust you, because they can know and like you, but if they don't trust you, it's all over. There's no better way than face-to-face communication. And with BNI, it's every week you're committed to go and do the giver's gain, right? You give and it comes back to you. And I want to tell everybody, and I know Nate will agree with me, this is a marathon, people, right? It's like losing weight or building wealth or anything else. And so when you get into an organization, you've got to give it your all and be true to yourself and others, and it'll come back to you.
I totally agree. And just, I appreciate the plug for BNI, and it's great to know we're fellow BNI, followers. But I'm a firm believer. I say this often. It might be a little counterproductive to my own business model, but I've said it in front of BNI members. I've said it at chambers of commerce. I've said it for years, and I mean it in my bones. I'm a firm believer that any networking is better than no networking. So I would much rather a hairstylist, a plumber, a roofer, a banker, a CPA be forming or finding some form of networking in their community locally. Heck, now it's a lot easier to do on Zoom than it used to be, even, although I like the belly-to-belly, face-to-face interaction. To me, it really helps. But I'm a firm believer any networking is better than no networking. And so, BNI isn't in all 50 states. We're all around the world. But if you either can't find a BNI chapter to fit your business or day or time or commitment level or whatever, then find something else or create your own. I mean, don't compete with us, but create your own and see what happens. And I see this at all levels. And I actually first learned this from my grandmother. I didn't know it at the time. I wish she were still alive because it didn't really hit me till a few years ago. But what my grandmother used to say to me a lot as a little kid was she would say, the more you give back to your community, the more your community will give back to you. And that was before I was ever exposed to BNI. She had nothing to do with BNI. She and my grandfather owned a manufacturing business that I would work at as a kid in the summers to make a few bucks, to help out, work with my hands, etc. And she didn't always say it in those exact words, but she also showed it a lot. A few examples, she would take my siblings and myself when we were little kids on Thanksgiving morning. My grandparents would pick us up in my grandpa's beat up little pickup truck. They'd take us to the Salvation Army in downtown Phoenix here, Thanksgiving morning. So no school, great weather here in Phoenix that time of year. Most of my friends would be out in the neighborhood playing football or sleeping in or watching football at home or helping around the house get ready for Thanksgiving. And my grandparents, it wasn't really optional, would insist on picking up myself, my younger brother, and my younger sister. And they take us to downtown Phoenix, the Salvation Army. I remember it well, like it was yesterday. We since have done very similar stuff with my own kids. And we would sort and pack food in the early morning. I'm talking like 5, 6 in the morning when, a young kid did not want to get up and go downtown on Thanksgiving Day. But we would sort and pack a bunch of food, put it in these styrofoam containers. And then the Salvation Army would have a list of local citizens and residents, a lot of single moms, a lot of, poverty-stricken homes and neighborhoods. And they would send us out and we would knock on the doors. And it seems to me, from what I can remember, a lot of the time it was unsolicited even. We would knock on the door and a mom would open the door holding 2 of her kids and we would offer them a Thanksgiving meal to have for dinner. And a lot of the times they were not expecting it. They were shocked, and they would say things like, if you wouldn't have stopped by, we wouldn't have had a Thanksgiving dinner. And so my grandparents instilled that in me as a little kid, and I'm so grateful for it. And I attempt to do that, not just with my own kids, but my kids are athletes. My 2 boys play baseball. My daughter's a gymnast. And I've done my best to even instill this in their teammates and the teams I've coached over the years. I'm not currently coaching, but coaching Little League, I would work with young men and young boys just as often about giving back to their community, everything we've already talked about, building relationships, having fun just as much as baseball. And I hope it has a small impact on some of those kids. So back to networking, it's just like community. It's like what my grandma taught me. The more you give back to your network, the more your network's going to give back to you. The more you give back to your community, hopefully they'll do the same.
I totally agree. And I've built my business on relationships. Where does Jordan Adler fit into this?
So I actually met Jordan, luckily, at a networking expo here in Phoenix. It was on the west side of Phoenix. It was at a resort type place. I can't remember the resort's name, but I can picture and remember when I met him, there was a gentleman who we both mutually had a relationship with, a guy named Gary Fangman, who knew Jordan from business past and had known me from BNI. And he said to me in advance, you got to meet this guy named Jordan. He's going to be in town. I don't think Jordan lived here at the time. He's only really ever lived in Phoenix a few short periods of time since I've known him. But Gary introduced the two of us. We exchanged business cards, shook hands, all that relational stuff. And then Jordan, being with Send Out Cards, sent me a greeting card. I actually still have the first one. I should have grabbed it out of my file cabinet for today. But a few days later, a greeting card shows up in my mailbox. And it had a picture of Jordan in it, and it had a nice to meet you message. And it said, I'd love to get together for coffee or lunch. A few weeks later, he was in town again. We went to a place called La Grande Orange. I remember that as well. He's just such a force of nature that when you meet Jordan and when you get to know him, you don't forget it. And I've never forgotten it. We hit it off, introduced him to my wife. He's known all my kids since before they were born. He's close friends with my father now. We've traveled the world together. He has a little known fact about Jordan, Jim. He has something in common with my daughter, and they love to talk about it. Jordan was a gymnast as a kid, very active, very competitive, very successful gymnast. He's still in great shape. Yeah, true story, by the way. You didn't know, you tell him I told you. And he's watched my daughter compete. He's watched my boys play baseball. So he's kind of like an adopted uncle to our little household, and we love it. He's such a great dude. We'll do anything for him, and oftentimes he's done anything and everything for us.
I thought I knew a lot about Jordan. I had no idea that he could flip around. Does he still like tumble? And
I don't think he flips around as much anymore, but
okay.
He is still in really great shape. And my boys work out far more than I do. And he's challenged them over the years. My oldest son's now 15. His name's JJ. Our middle child is also a boy. He just turned 13 last Thursday, and our daughter's 9. When we've been together, as in great a shape as my boys are, and like they can run circles around me, Jordan's older than me. They're obviously younger than me. Jordan's challenged them to push-up contests before and won. And he does, what's the exercise called where you put your 2 arms on a bar and you go up and down? He could do more of those than my boys put together in a really short order. So takes good care of himself, still works out, but I don't think he does the twirls or flips anymore. If he does, I haven't seen it, but I'll ask him next time I see him.
Well, next time I see Jordan, I'm going to ask him to put on a performance for me.
You should.
So networking is what you do. How did you get into the BNI space? Because you aren't just part of a chapter, you are in charge, right? I mean, you're growing this. You're at a high level. You own a piece of this. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I can. So again, family is everything to me, always has been, always will be. My dad actually is who kind of first exposed me to BNI. Long story short, my family had moved to Phoenix metro area from Denver, Colorado, mid-'80s. BNI had just been started by Dr. Ivan Meisner in California. My dad was in the telecommunication business and wanted to grow his business and grow his network. So he had heard about BNI, which was actually called The Network at the time, later evolved to our formal name, Business Network International. Then we actually went international, and those 3 words aren't translated well in every language. So now most of the world just refers to us as BNI. So my dad gets a hold of this guy, Ivan, in California, and says, I want to join a chapter in Phoenix. They've started to build a relationship via the phone, hit it off. They're still good friends to this day. Ivan's been a huge part of my life and my family's life. He's a mentor and a friend. And so my dad got involved first to represent his telecom business here in Phoenix. Fast forward, as BNI was growing around the country, Ivan was traveling outside of LA more and more. So I think the story goes, the first couple chapters in like 85 were in LA. Then a chapter was started in Montana because somebody from LA moved to Montana. Then a chapter was started in Hawaii because somebody in Honolulu heard about Ivan. And then Arizona was the 4th spot on the map. We're now in all 50 states, every major city, 75 plus countries around the world. So as Ivan started to grow the company in the early and mid 90s, my dad kind of was building a business simultaneous to his paging business here in Arizona. Ivan caught wind of it. and asked my dad to be the first U.S. national director of the company. He took that role in 1998 or so. I was in high school, just started dating my now wife. We will celebrate our 25th anniversary together this coming March. And we went to college together, got married after college. So we'll be 19 years married this coming March as well. And so Kelly and I had just started dating. My dad's traveling to California and back often. As a teenager, as my dad was heavily involved in coaching me in sports and everything, but now as a teenager, it wasn't like I wanted to spend all my free time with him anyhow, even though we're still great friends. We sit next to each other and tailgate at Arizona Cardinal games, play a little golf together, and he's a huge blessing in my life. But so I grew up around it. Long story short, I grew up around BNI. Like I said, went to college, got a marketing degree. In Flagstaff, there were no BNI chapters in Flagstaff at the time that I was going to school up there. So it was kind of a good break for me, not just from the heat of Phoenix, where it's nice and hot, as you know, but also it was a step away from the family business. So I was able to go to school, snowboard a lot, play some golf, really enjoy the experience, and then move back down to Phoenix. And still, in all honesty, didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. But what I knew was no matter what I did, the better I got at networking and relationships and providing resources and everything we've talked about and everything you talk about on a lot of your shows, that it would help. I remember consciously thinking, no matter what I do in life, if I can figure out this networking thing, it will help. And now I do it full time. So BNI is franchise based all around the country and all around the world. My wife and I own the 2 franchises now for Phoenix metro area, all of Northern Arizona. We bought my father out back in 2016. I am a member of a chapter as well, though. So I participate at all levels and I love it. My chapter meets on Wednesdays in Central Phoenix here. It's what we do. But we don't do it alone. We've got 84 chapters now that we support here, and it takes a team of about 50 directors, several full-time employees. We've got an office in Central Phoenix off of 16th Street. It's our home base, but we've got chapters up in Northern Arizona, up in Flagstaff now, where I went to school, in Prescott Valley, and just about every corner of the Phoenix metro area, which another small unknown fact, Jim, is Phoenix is not only now the largest, the 5th largest city in the U.S., 5th largest. Houston's up there. I think Houston's like 3, 4. Okay, we're on your
Chicago's 3, LA's 2, New York's 1.
Okay, we're gonna catch you, just so you know.
Actually, we're gonna catch Chicago, which is a fact, and I think it'll take a little while to catch up to us if we're gonna take over Chicago, but that's okay.
Maybe we'll both jump them. Let's jump them.
That's fine. We'll see. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, that's good.
So that's my story, and I love it. My kids have now been exposed to BNI. All 3 of my kids have been to BNI meetings. They hear Givers Gain a lot in the household, in our home office. They've been to our office, and it's a family affair.
Interesting you said that. I have 2 children that are grown now. My daughter, she just turned 20 years old yesterday, and my son will be 23 in February.
Sweet.
And they don't know anything different than me being an entrepreneur. Back in 2003, when my son was 2 years old, I left the corporate world to become an entrepreneur, and just about immediately got into networking. So they don't know any better. They know all about that. And I was very active in BNI. I was active in other organizations like the Chamber and so forth. And I would even open up my home. My wife and I, once a quarter, would open up our home for a big networking event at our house. And I would invite, of course, BNI fellow members and from other chapters. Oh, yeah. And we would take all the furniture out of the first floor of our home. We would invite 250 people, and about 150 people would come. And we hired people to serve drinks and food. I mean, but when it comes to connections, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is not necessarily like to throw parties, but when you as an individual want to connect and want to network, there's no better way than inviting someone to an event at your home, and you're giving away door prizes, which are iPods. So the point is, this was years ago when they had the small little ones. But the point is you can take your networking to the ultimate level. And connecting. Jordan's a great connector. I like to connect. I've always networked. I believe in your network is your net worth. We've, of course, heard that. And it really is true, especially for what I call the little guy. And it's okay to be a little guy. This country is built on little guys, small businesses, self-employed. And I used to be a proponent of building a business, a big business, that's okay, but it's not for everybody. There are people who are self-employed who are better off being self-employed and can actually make more money than operating a business with 50 employees where the money is just flowing out. And so there's all kinds of controls you can have. So I'm familiar with all, stages, being an employee, being self-employed, being an employer. And so, those are kind of the, three basic ones. And Robert Kiyosaki will throw in, of course, the investor. There's a 4 quadrants. Won't go down that road now. And a lot of people that I've met over the years who are part of a BNI or other networkers at that level, these people are really self-employed and they are the brand, right? They're the brand.
Oh, 100%. And I think right now, so I'm no economist. I took a few economy classes at NAU, but that was a long time ago. I'm finding and feeling right now that everything you just said, as it relates to, call it one man, one woman bands, independent sales associates, and could be selling pens or health insurance or homes or whatever. The ability to build and nurture and support a network is more important than ever. And it's kind of like multiple factors. I think with the millennials and the Gen Xers and getting so attached to phones and Facebook and Instagram and thinking that replaces real belly-to-belly, face-to-face networking, I think makes networking even more valuable. Coming out of the pandemic, and everybody being locked at home and getting used to Zoom and working from home and being able to sell things like a house or a car from Zoom from home, because society and the pandemic kind of made it happen, even going to school from home. I think that was good, and we're obviously doing it today. But I think the ability, or not ability, what do I want to call it? The introduction of Zoom and working from home and everything being so technology efficient makes in-person real belly-to-belly networking that more valuable. Then you add in the economy, and no matter what economy, but especially when things are tough. And in Phoenix right now, we're seeing a lot of competition, interest rates being where they are, the unknowns out there. I think people who are turning their head to stuff like this, the pandemic, the next generation, the economy, and not leaning into real networking, real relationship building. I didn't say this earlier, but I believe in the 4 R's, which are relationships come first. Then you provide resources to your relationships. That's what leads to referrals, which small business owners will tell you they have to grow a business. And then referrals are what leads to the final R, which are results. And those happen in chronological order. And then once you accomplish all 4 of them, you can work it backwards. And not to be on a soapbox, and again, I'm no economist, but I think for the next couple of years, we got election cycle coming up. Hopefully everything is amazing for the next 10 years, a lot like they have been, but you never know. I think leaning into networking and everything you support and everything you talk about and having real connectors in your life like Jordan Adler's is just increasing in value every day and every minute. And so that's what I'm up to, and very grateful for it.
Nate, I agree. And I'll tell you something is interesting. I believe what is old is new again. Last week, I spoke with Cody Bateman, Promptings, Send Out Cards.
Love him.
And, what's great about Send Out Cards is you can send a personal touch in print to someone in the mailbox through USPS, the old Pony Express, which is old. And I mean, the U.S. Postal Service is so old, if it were private sector, would have gone out of business, but it's not going to, because it has to be there. It's part of who we are as Americans. We're always going to get mail no matter where we are. And that is, getting a card in the mail is so basic. And if everyone else is communicating digitally, but you're communicating with a card, exactly, and you're going to a BNI meeting or a chamber meeting, or you're having a party at your place where you take everything out of the first floor and you invite everyone in town, right? We are still human beings. Our DNA, who we are, has not changed in 10 years. Social media has come up in 10 years. It's been about 10 years where it's really made an impact. And that's okay. So, Nate, I want your play, what you think one can do with the personal touches through a Send Out Cards, the personal touches through a BNI, and then use social media to throw fuel on that, because we don't want to forget about social media, but we don't want to make that the foundation, in my opinion. I think we want to make the face-to-face, the personal touch is the foundation. How do we use the foundation and throw social media on as more fuel?
So first of all, Cody Bateman is an amazing human. I know him thanks to Jordan. He created Send Out Cards and Promptings. I've read his books. I've been to his seminars. I've learned a lot about business and relationships and everything we've talked about from Cody. So I'm glad to know you guys have connected. So greeting cards. For starters, there is something to be said about physical touch. Humans appreciate it. We have since, caveman days. And I also did recently hear, I don't remember where it was or what book I heard it in, that there's a lot of cycles going on that are about 15 to 20 years. And you're right, the technology wave has really engulfed us for the last 15 to 20 years. And I see a return to the importance of physical greeting cards, especially when it comes to follow-up. And what I find kind of the biggest, one of the biggest failures of business people who do the relationships, referrals, all that stuff, they don't follow up afterwards. And, a quote that a coach of mine, a guy by the name of Troy Henson, who also knows Jordan and probably Cody, he said this to me years and years ago. And I don't know if he came up with it or who gets the initial credit. Troy would always say to me, business never goes away. It just goes to somebody else. So what are you going to do to keep your business with you? And follow up, especially in big ass cities like Phoenix or Houston or New York City or LA or Paris or Rome, where there's so many millions of people fighting for the same business. I think the fortune's in the follow up. And Send Out Cards is so great for that. And not just the cards, but also the gifts. People remember stuff like that. So we encourage the heck out of it in BNI. We've got members here, like a guy by the name of George Redheffer. He's been a BNI member here in Arizona for probably going on 15 years. And
I know George, speaking of connections, I know him well through A1 Garage Door Service. Yeah.
And Tommy Mello. I just talked to Tommy the other day. We got a lot of.
Did you? Tommy Mello's a good friend of mine. Yeah.
Yep. I've known Tommy for years, watched him really explode that business. And let's use him as an example. The guy's amazing at follow-up. The guy's amazing at relationship building. He plants seeds, which I think is every one of our jobs all the time, is to plant seeds in other people's brains and other people's memories to think about us and remember us even when we don't want them to. And here's an example I was going to quickly give regarding Send Out Cards. We probably 15 to 17 years now, we've used Send Out Cards to send out holiday cards. And my wife, to her credit, really gets most of the credit. She'll schedule a family photo shoot every year, like September, October. So I'm sure it's on our calendar coming up here this fall. And she'll use different photographers. She'll get the family together, which first and foremost is selfish. It's created a running log of family photos of our family. Our dogs have been involved and watching our kids grow up. But then we put that picture on the front of a Send Out Card greeting card every year. We send it out around Thanksgiving, 300 to 400 of them, some years as many as 500 of them. And they go to our friends, our family, clients, vendors, neighbors in our neighborhood, etc. And I cannot tell you how many times it's happened in July or in August that we're at a family friend's house or a neighbor's house and July or August, and we walk in and our family's Christmas card or holiday card is on somebody's refrigerator. Or when I've been visiting a business person I get mutually introduced to, and I drop into their office and I see a picture of my own family sitting on a counter or in a bookshelf from those holiday cards. So not only do greeting cards and real in-person handshakes and stuff like that leave an immediate impression on people far more than a text message or a LinkedIn note or a like on Instagram, but also people keep that stuff. Like I said, I still have the first greeting card that Jordan sent me 20 years ago. He sent me a bunch since then. Sorry, Jordan, I haven't kept them all, but I still have that first one because it had a major impact on me. And so people remember that stuff and people keep that stuff. And as it relates to BNI, and back to the thing that my coach taught me, business never goes away. It just goes to somebody else. Anything that any one of us can do to plant those seeds, to water them, to nurture them, to feed them so that they can grow entire crops just gives us an advantage. And it goes back to what you said. And I'm so glad you brought it up here. People do business with people they know, like, and trust. Yeah. And the more we get to know people and see them in the grocery store or at Costco or see their holiday card on our refrigerator, it just, kind of plants those little seeds, and then you never know what can grow out of it. So to me, it's a marriage made in heaven. Send out cards. We've had a strategic alliance together for each other for years. Cody has met Jordan and Cody has met Ivan. Ivan and Cody have spoken on stage together over the years and done nothing but compliment both organizations. And I've been in the audience. I've been a tiny part of that from the beginning. And, it's changed lives and changed businesses in good economies and bad economies, before a pandemic, during a pandemic, and it's continuing to after a pandemic.
It is a great combination. If someone were to ask me how to approach the market as a self-employed person, let's say it's a realtor. Hey, I just got my license. I'm going to start selling in the local community. What would you recommend?
Well, education. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, it starts with education to me. And
sure.
Again, I learned this from my dad. My grandparents probably get a lot of credit from this. And I think it was Benjamin Franklin or Thomas Edison. Somebody said, there's only one thing in life that nobody can ever take away from any of us. And that's the knowledge that we gather in between our own two ears, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like for all we know, your car, my car, somebody's car is getting stolen right now, right? Eventually, we'll lose some of our health as we get older. Plants will die in our backyards, et cetera. But one thing that nobody can ever take away from you or me is the knowledge, the wisdom that we gather in between our own two ears. Yet it's kind of, backwards a little bit to tell somebody like a brand new real estate agent, if you really want to grow your business, you got to invest in yourself first. You got to learn the ropes. You got to cut your teeth, even if that means spending money before you ever make money. Growth is expensive. I also had somebody say that to me a few weeks ago. I don't remember the context, but I remember taking the note and writing it down. Growth can be expensive, but when you invest in yourself, invest in your team, invest in your company, invest in your career first, I find it pays bigger dividends second versus just hitting the ground running. But sometimes we've got to hit the ground running. And so a few quick tips that I've learned over the years from people like the names we've mentioned here today. Don't do it alone. Find a partner. In my early days of networking, Kelly was off starting her own career. I wouldn't go to networking events by myself, in part because I'm somewhat introverted and I was young and I didn't know a lot of people in Phoenix. To me, to go to a happy hour or to go to a chamber mixer, and instead of walking in solo, to have a kind of partner in crime with me that I could introduce to people I knew. And a lot of times it was that guy, Troy, I mentioned earlier, my coach. He would introduce me to people he knew. We'd be at a networking event for the first 10 minutes or so together. We'd go separate directions. We'd carpool most of the time. So then we'd meet up at the end. But it helped with my confidence. It helped create connections. So don't do it alone. You've got a friend or a family member that'll tag along with you to dinner or happy hour or holiday party, stuff like that. So that's one. Another one is don't be shy. Another way I put it is fake it till you make it. People don't know if you or me are introverts or not, unless we go to an event and stand in the corner with our hands in our pockets the whole time. Or if, as we're meeting people, we say things like, man, I'm so uncomfortable. I didn't want to be here tonight. They don't know otherwise. So don't throw yourself under the bus. So don't be shy is another one. Follow up is key. Sometimes you want to go deep just as much as you go wide. And so if you meet somebody and you really hit it off, now that you said his name, I don't remember how I first met Tommy Mello, but he had really just started A1 Garage Door. It's a huge garage door company here in Arizona. He was in essence like a one-man band when I first met him.
He was. He started off painting garage doors before he got into the repair business.
Yes. And now he's got like 5,000 trucks on the road. He's on billboards here in Phoenix. I see him all the time. We hadn't connected really probably in over a year, and he called me last week. So it's so ironic that you even brought him up, and we were threatening to get together and catch up in the next couple of weeks. Anyhow, so don't be shy, fake it till you make it. But what I was going to say is I remember early on, Tommy at least made me feel, whether it was 100% or not, that he wanted to develop a deep relationship with me. And I meet a lot of people who go out there and they're so surface level, they just want to meet as many people as possible and build this huge database in their iPhone of 8,000 contacts, but then they never go deep. They never actually nurture or develop a strong relationship with people. You got to do both. And it's easier said than done. You mentioned earlier, it's a marathon. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Not just building a business, but building relationships. And I'm no expert at it, but so back to education. When you're out networking, whoever's paying attention here and ends up at a networking event, and you notice somebody that might be the next Tommy Mello or the next Jordan or the next Jim, or hopefully maybe a little bit of Nate, pick their brains, learn from them, ask them what they're doing that works. And Jordan kind of says this jokingly about me often, because I do it. He says that Nate's the guy that asks like a lot of questions, sometimes too many. Sometimes it annoys my kids or my wife, even if we're at dinner and as the server's placing an order for us, I ask like, how long you been here in Phoenix, or how long have you worked here? Which is kind of irrelevant. I may never see them again, but just keeping a server at a table, showing interest for an extra couple of seconds, them showing interest in me, it kind of makes everything bigger, better, stronger, and faster. But I hate to say it, I don't see many people doing it. And I'm no expert, but I've learned from the best, and it's working so far.
So I've told my kids, and I'll tell anyone this, but part of my job here on earth is to raise my children, train them, prepare them, right? And I told them this many times. And if they're watching this, by the way, when they were younger, I'd make them watch this stuff or listen to me when I did my radio show, my Bring On Success radio show. And I interviewed Jordan for the first time in 2009 on the radio show, and I'd make them listen to, these interviews. But I tell people, including my children, that you need to learn to communicate. People who communicate the best earn the most. It's almost always true. People 100%. On stage, people writing books, people on TV, radio, the #1 podcast, they're all making money. And if you can communicate, you can navigate life better. It's not just about the money, but if you want to make a good living and you're a good communicator or a great communicator, the money will follow one way or the other. And it's critical. And I'll tell you, here's some really good news for the people who want to beat other people as competitors, if you will. Let everyone go on to social media and compete with each other and try to sell things in a way that's more transactional than a personal know, like, and trust. And, Nate, in my business, you might not know what I do, but I help home service providers like A1 Garage Door Service get their name out, but not just their name. We produce these videos in these short podcasts that are on our client's website. So when you're looking to get your garage door fixed, you're going to hire XYZ, DEF, or A1, because on A1, when you go there, you can see me talk with that business owner. And you want to hire people that you know, like, and trust. So TV ads work well. Billboards, to your point with Tommy. He's got billboards all over town. He's got his face all over the vans and the trucks. He's on TV. And so when people see him on Google, they're like, I know Tommy. They never met Tommy. Okay, so that's a different case because it's big, but I kind of do the same thing for my clients, plumbers and roofers and so forth. And it's very simple. People feel familiar with you. They know, like, and trust you. They're more likely to engage with you, which means you have a huge advantage over someone that says, click here to chat with us. That's okay. What do you look like? What do you sound like? What are your values? So,
are you even in my town or my state or my country?
So, what do we have in common? Yeah. Are you my neighbor?
Yeah. Communication's so key. And I love what you do. And I would summarize what you just said and what I've known and what guys like Tommy have figured out how to partner with people like you to tap into. It's reputation building. And there are ways to build reputation indirectly. Directly always works, but there's only one of us and I only have so many hours in the day. You only have so many hours in the day. Reputation building is key. And the more you communicate, the better you get at communicating, the more that happens, which just made me think about this. So have you ever studied Benjamin Franklin much at all, Jim?
I love Benjamin Franklin. Yes. I've seen documentaries on him. I've read, and he, by the way, there's no one ever in American history or probably world history that has accomplished what he has accomplished.
I totally agree. And he was a huge communicator. And it goes back to send out cards, by the way. And you mentioned the U.S. Postal Service, and for better or worse, whatever keeps it going, however it keeps going, we need it to keep going in this country. And during the pandemic, and around the world for that matter, I read a biography on Benjamin Franklin that I might not have, I'm not a history buff. I'd never really studied the founding fathers per se prior to the pandemic. But for the Christmas before in 2019, my dad gave me a 1,000-page biography written by Walter Isaacson. I highly recommend it to anybody that likes to read. You can also download it on Audible. And it was kind of the life and times of Benjamin Franklin. And he was one of the original founding fathers that wanted the colonies. This was early 1700s, well before the US became a country. He wanted people to communicate with each other. And so, depending on what you read, I don't know who started the first post office, but I know Benjamin Franklin was a big part in creating a network using mail and newspapers, by the way. He was in the printing business, and he started and bought newspapers in order to put communication out there. Because he, from what I've gathered in studying him since, he knew that no matter how strong the passion that the original colony folks had to break away from Great Britain and create their own country, no matter how strong the passion was individually, if there was no collective efforts between the different colonies, and there was no cell phones back then, there was no text messaging, it was, we've got to use horse and buggy in essence to communicate with each other, that it would never happen. And so this summer, actually last summer, my family was on the East Coast. We were in Philadelphia. My middle son played in a baseball tournament in New York. We went down to Philadelphia. We went to a Phillies game. But I also made a point of taking my kids, my family, to what they say is the first post office in Philadelphia, which was started before the country was founded. It's still the same red brick building. And right behind it was Benjamin Franklin's first office. Later, in his later years, I believe after the country was born, he built a home on this same little homestead in what is now downtown Philadelphia. And it was phenomenal to educate my kids a little bit, to learn more about history, and realize it's not like here in Arizona or in Houston. They had to deal with snow, not just horse and buggies to get a letter from, Philadelphia down to Virginia or up to Boston. They had to deal with weather. They had to deal with these huge storms. They had to deal with the mountains and everything else. But it came back to communication, which I'm so glad you brought up, relationship building, and like you've gotten very good at, it has to do with reputations. And it can be so counterproductive when somebody's bad-mouthing your reputation or putting things out there, true or false, versus, the more we each build good reputations and communicate it to the world, the better off we all are, I think. And that applies to networking 1000% all day, every day.
Nate, we could talk all day.
I think we might have to do this again. I really enjoyed it.
We may have to. Next time I'm in Phoenix, I'm going to definitely let you know.
I'd love to have you anytime.
You can show me all the hot spots.
No pun intended.
Exactly. Record-breaking heat in Phoenix, Arizona this summer. And it was record-breaking heat all over the country, and Houston was no different here as well. Nate, I want to say thank you, my friend. I want to call you a friend because I feel that I'm very close to you.
Please do. Feelings mutual. Thank you, Jim.
Thank
Great
you so
show.
much for joining
I love
me
what
today.
you do. If I can ever do anything to help you out or your listeners or your followers, whether they're in Phoenix or not, don't ever hesitate to reach out. Otherwise, make it an outstanding day.
I appreciate it. And I'm going to have all of Nate's contact information in the show notes and any other goodies he may want to drop in there to help everybody. Awesome. Thanks again, Nate.
Thanks, everybody.